Hello everybody and welcome to Electric City Sentai Denzicaster, your somewhat regularly scheduled podcast about the wonderful world of Tokusatsu. This is your host, Mike Brown, and this is the final audio episode of Denzicaster. Starting on our next episode 2 weeks from today, we will be going straight video. It's going to be a shorter show. It's going to be somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes as opposed to our somewhere between 60 and 90 minute format now. For TV shows, it'll go from being 4 episodes of some Tokusatsu television show per episode to 2 episodes. But hopefully we will wind up as a result of this, since we'll be getting more tapings done. We will hopefully be putting stuff up for Denzicaster a little more often. We're not sure about the schedule yet, so right now it's still going to be every couple of weeks, but hey, you never know. I've got 3 episodes waiting in the can, and a taping happening a week from tonight, so hey, we could have a whole lot more Denzicaster coming your way real soon. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the debut movie in the now next to last Japanese era of Godzilla movies, and that is Godzilla 2000 Millennium, the full title of the 24th Godzilla feature film. I'm going to be joined by Dave the Head, Joe, Richie, Roger, and our kaiju aficionado in residence, Ryan McAllister, will be here with us as well. So they'll be coming up in the discussion here in just a few minutes. A little background on Godzilla 2000. This kicks off the Millennium era. Godzilla, as we've discussed in previous episodes, broken down currently into 3 major eras. There is the Heisei era of Godzilla. That begins with Gojira in 1954 and ends, I think it's 1974. I may have that year slightly wrong. But the Terror of Mechagodzilla. That's the last of the Showa era Godzilla movies. Then you go to the Heisei era. Now, the actual Heisei era didn't begin for another 4 or 5 years, but the Heisei era of the Godzilla feature films is considered to have started in 1984 with the movie Godzilla in Japan, oftentimes referred to as the Return of Godzilla to differentiate it from its original counterpart, the 1954 feature. Sometimes it's called Godzilla 1984. Or if you see the Americanized version of it, Godzilla 1985 is what it's actually called in the US. I think just Godzilla 85. But in 2000, we get the next feature film. It was actually in 1999, but it's set in 2000. And it is essentially an apology, the way as a lot of fans look at it. 1998, Godzilla came out in the United States, the Sony Pictures version. This followed Godzilla Final Wars, which was the final, or excuse me, not Godzilla Final Wars, but rather Godzilla vs. Destroya, which was the last film of the Heisei era that effectively killed off Godzilla. It serves as the death of the original Godzilla, so to speak, and the birth of Godzilla Jr., the second Godzilla of that franchise. And after that film, after Godzilla vs. Destroya, they ceased making Godzilla films for quite a while. Sony Pictures got the rights, produced an American Godzilla. That monster, that kaiju in that film, now known officially as Zilla, not Godzilla, but just Zilla in the Toho lexicon of giant monsters. That movie essentially tanks. As I have said time and again, sometimes on the mic and often off, that movie would have been just fine if they'd have called it anything other than Godzilla. But that was the problem. They called it Godzilla, they set a certain expectation for it by doing so. When that film came out, there had been 22 Godzilla feature films that preceded it. So there was an expectation in place, and they did not meet that expectation. So in what was essentially, in a lot of ways, scramble mode, Toho very quickly released a new Godzilla feature film. Literally very quickly, as in the next year. and that film, Godzilla 2000 Millennium. And that kicks off the Millennium era of the Godzilla feature films. That runs from Godzilla 2000 through Godzilla Final Wars, the misspeak I had earlier. The Millennium era, starting with this one, is an interesting beast. It essentially ignores any continuity from any Godzilla film that precedes it, save the original. The original Godzilla feature film in 1954 is the only film considered to be 100% truly canon to Millennium, to Godzilla 2000. And this would be the trend for virtually every Millennium-era film. Godzilla 2000, Godzilla versus... Godzilla vs. Biollante is a Heisei-era movie. I'm misspeaking here and getting my movies mixed up. There have been over 24 of them. But let's see. Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, GMK, as it's usually referred to shorthand. Godzilla Tokyo SOS, Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, Godzilla Final Wars. None of these movies consider any of their predecessors to be canon, with the only limited exception being against Mechagodzilla and Tokyo SOS. That is essentially a duology. Those two movies are beholden to one another with their story. So those I sort of consider their own piece of Godzilla history, as we've discussed before. That was on the Denzicaster roll call episode. But this film was released in Japan, 1999, on December 11th. It got a limited release in the U.S. And Canada in August of 2000, and had its title shortened to simply Godzilla 2000 for its North American run. The film, budget-wise in Japan, the film was made for $8.3 million in 1999. At the Japanese box office, it made almost $28 million, so it certainly made its money back for Toho. With this particular feature film, just to give you an idea of the plot here, in this film, Godzilla is essentially a force of nature. He is an entity, not unlike a hurricane or a tornado or a tsunami. He is looked at in this way. And to the point that, much like we have the National Weather Service here in the United States, Japan has the Godzilla Prediction Network. And they are an independent organization that studies the monster and predicts his landfall. Meanwhile, you have the Crisis Control Intelligence, CCI, and they discover a UFO that is 60 million years old in the Japan Trench, and they try to study it. And essentially Godzilla winds up interceding in the whole deal. So that's sort of where the whole thing starts, is these two organizations, and Godzilla, the force of nature, trying to stop Orga, the organism, excuse me, as I stumble over some words there, that the organism that comes from the UFO, and essentially tries to become Godzilla in a lot of ways. There's a lot of sci-fi. This is probably one of the heavier sci-fi Godzilla movies, and there's certainly a lot of stuff going on in the movie as far as that goes. But there's a lot of interesting bits and pieces to this movie that make it stand out in my eyes against a lot of the other Godzilla feature films. So we will definitely be talking about that as we go forward here in our discussion. Should be a whole lot of fun to talk about and take a look at. Now, for the record, in case you're wondering which version we wound up watching the subtitled version. There are a couple of different dubs. Frankly, not too many of them are overly overly good. There was an international version, and then there was one that was done here in the United States, a North American version. So Yeah, but we're not looking at either one of those. We're looking specifically at the subtitled version. Also worth noting here, I guess I should point out, that this movie, Godzilla 2000, is the first Godzilla feature film since Godzilla 85. So it's the first Godzilla feature film when it gets released in 15 years to see an American or North American theatrical release. So something to be said for that. They popped this one out and punched it out really, really quick. So when we come back, we're going to take a look and have a discussion of Godzilla 2000. It'll be myself, Dave the Head, our Wandering Ronin Joe, Richie, Ryan, and Late to the Room Broom, as he has now been christened, as we take a look at Godzilla 2000 here on Electric City Sentai Denzicaster. Stick around, folks. There's more to come. Hello, wrestling fans. Greg Hunter here, one half of the best damn announce team, period, along with John the Body Johnson, encouraging you to join us right here exclusively on the ECS network for the Announcers Booth. Between us, we have over 30 years' experience in the world of professional wrestling, and we use that to bring you the insights in the squared circle right here, past, present, and future on the ECS network. So join myself and John the Body Johnson for the Announcers Booth, only on the ECS network. Alright, everybody, we just got done watching Godzilla 2000 here on Denzicaster. Welcome back. We are joined by Dave the Head, our resident kaiju aficionado, Ryan. What, Joe?
You said resident.
Yes, I did say resident. I'm tired.
Thanks for calling that out, God.
I'm sure they didn't hear it.
Joe Budnick is here, the Wandering Ronin. Richie and Roger, in his usual show up in the last 10 minutes of the movie syndrome.
Oh, not even.
What's the what's the nickname of George Jones?
George Jones?
Or No Show Jones?
Yeah, No Show Jones.
Yeah, that's
no Show Broom.
Late to the Room Broom.
There you go. So, we just got done watching Godzilla 2000. I gave a little bit of background before the break, before any of the rest of the gentlemen joined us here this week. But this was, in essence, Toho's apology for letting Sony fuck it up. So this was them deciding to drop back and punt after Gino came out with Matthew Broderick in it, the American Godzilla. And actually, this one did air in American theaters.
Yep.
Was actually released by TriStar in the U.S. in 2000. For the record, it was the last Godzilla movie to be released in the United States for 14 years. The next one wouldn't hit the U.S. until Legendary's Godzilla came out.
That's probably one reason why I loved it so much, because when I went to see it in Anderson down here on 85, I was literally the only one there.
Really?
Yes. Wow. I got the pick of the entire... What made it so funny was they didn't stick it in a small movie theater. They stuck it in one of the two bigger theaters there at the place.
So is this at Marketplace? Or?
It was up here at Regal.
Okay.
Cross 85.
Okay.
And I was like, hell yeah. I jumped up, went somewhere, until I finally got situated where I wanted to be, which is basically dead smack ass in the middle on the lower end. I didn't go up the top like I usually do. But I didn't get right up on top of the movie. But I was like, oh, yes.
But that should also give you an indication of how it did at the box office here in the States.
True, too.
So, this would be the 24th overall Godzilla feature film. It is the 23rd produced by Toho. Of interest, as we mentioned before the break, but I'll mention again with everyone here, this begins the Millennium era. This is sort of the first movie in Godzilla history. And this is the first one since Return of Godzilla, which is what we watched the last time we watched a Godzilla movie here on the podcast, that ignores everything that came before it. So everything from Godzilla Raids Again, which I was mistakenly calling Godzilla's Counterattack, which I think is an American name for one of the other Godzilla movies. But everything from Godzilla Raids Again all the way through Godzilla vs. Destroya, they ignore outright.
Yeah.
Only the 1954 movie counts. But they go back to the drawing board with a lot of this. It's a new suit. They do tend to make a new suit for almost every movie, but a lot of base elements are the same. This is a very threatening-looking Godzilla.
I like it.
Well,
the only one.
You had mentioned, Ryan, that this was probably your favorite Godzilla design, or at least among them?
In the rundown of Godzilla suits, yeah, especially since, I don't know if you guys may have mentioned it earlier, we were talking a little bit about the forthcoming film, this coming, 2016 summer.
Godzilla Resurgence will be
Yeah.
the American title.
Yeah, I was able to get you guys to take a look at picture 2 of it, but
Godzilla on Titan is how I would describe the photo.
yeah, it's messed up. I mean, that whole thing is really weird and difficult, but we're gonna deal with what we got going on.
Yeah, we're not gonna worry about that right now.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, what you got here is, you're right. This was their version of saying, hey, Toho is the brand when it comes to men in suits, when it comes to monster kaiju movies. This is how you should have done it, Sony. Our suit, yeah, it's feral. Your creature was feral, but our suit looked better, and I loved it. I love the spines, I love the design, I love the attitude, I love the way it presents itself. If you look at some of the models from the actual suit, the claws extend out like a cat's claws would. The toe claws are also extended more. I mean, it's not like a dinosaur, not like Jurassic Park. It's 100 times better than what you actually find in reality. Now that's my version of why I liked it. I mean, I think we all kind of saw little snippets of this Godzilla. He's not like the other traditional Godzillas, like like if you find Godzilla versus let's do Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Sure.
Where you've got the Godzilla that comes in, he bows, he's Earth's friends, or Godzilla versus Megalon, where he befriends Jaguar. You've got that Godzilla, but this one here, he's more methodical. You're actually looking at probably the most intelligent Godzilla in the line series. Now, that's not to say that the but that's not to say that the legendary Godzilla wasn't thinking, but he literally is like a ninja in that aspect on that film. He's the force of nature. He's the Shogun when he shows up. But then when he's ready to disappear, he's like the quiet ninja. Here in this one, he just shows up. I'm the king. I got my foot up your ass. And I'm going to show you how it's done. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to destroy this, because I know if I don't, I got to put up with it later on, depending on the creature that I have to deal with.
One of the things and they go out of their way in some of the summaries and write-ups of this movie to say that in this movie, and I don't remember if it was Richie or Joe that touched upon this when we were watching, Godzilla's a force of nature, and they make it a point in this movie. He is realistically neither the good guy nor the bad guy in this movie. He is a force of nature.
He is a thing that is.
Yeah.
I think that was Richie.
Force of nature.
Yeah.
And I tend to agree with that. That's the vibe I get off the suit. This will sound really strange, but I can't think of a better way to describe it. I mean, obviously it's supposed to be a living creature, but it looks very organic. Just with some of the odd shapes, some of the odd designs, like the spines especially are what attract me to this suit.
Yeah.
The spines down the back have a very organic look, because some of the other suits have a very, very artificial or machined look to them, a pattern of spines.
They're like a clover leaf almost in some aspects. Whereas this one here is like jagged. I mean, it's like jagged rocks.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a jagged,
Geological.
A geological forms.
You said you liked this one, Joe, the costume.
Not to reiterate all the points, Ryan, because I think of similar veins on this costume. But one of the things that also struck me is how expressive it could be. It's not that it was more mobile or articulated than some of the other suits that have been done throughout the years. But
if anything, it was probably less in certain cases.
And that's a point toward less is more in certain cases. I think, the jaw movement may not have been the best jaw movement, but with what was there in terms of articulation, in terms of the design of the different features, it gave him an air of expressiveness, which lends itself very strongly to Ryan's point about the intelligence, and it looked like this Godzilla, while he was a force of nature, was an intelligent force of nature that contemplated its actions, its plan of attack.
Well,
it reacted more to the UFO in the film, and then later on when the UFO took the regenerative G1 to create its, try to create its ultimate form to survive on the Earth, you can still see Godzilla's like, oh, really great. Okay, fine, I'll deal with you. And then, okay, this is how I'm going to deal with you. Whereas in previous films, it's just Godzilla shows up, and it's okay, I'm going to kick a rock at you, or I'm going to swing my tail around. Which Godzilla does this in this film too, but
sure,
it's not done in the sense of just like a play fight.
Well, yeah, like
it's almost like it can be almost taken like a UFC fight in a way.
Yeah.
The way he thinks about it.
In the first movie, he's more like a boulder. He's just rolling along. There's nothing you can do about it. In this one, I was about to say, he does look like a boxer. Like, he comes out, he takes a bit of a beating, he comes at it a different way, and he always looks like, I don't know how they did it in this one compared to other ones, but he always looks like he's thinking. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they were able to capture it, but it always looks like he's thinking.
I think part of that is the suit itself, and I'm going to give some credit here. A lot of that's probably the suit actor.
Yes.
One of the things that struck me as very interesting looking at this, the suit actor for this one, and this is his first outing as Godzilla, is, and I apologize if I'm butchering the name, but Tsutomu Kitagawa is the gentleman playing in the suit in this one. Only his second time ever in a giant monster suit. The first time he ever plays a giant monster is the year before. In Rebirth of Mothra 3, he is Grand King Ghidorah. But he will play Godzilla in this, and then literally every movie, I think, as I look here, save maybe one from the Millennium series. I think the only one he's not in...
Final War.
No, he's Godzilla in Final Wars. He's in Final Wars, Tokyo SOS, against Mechagodzilla versus Megaguirus, so which means the only one he's not in is GMK, I think.
Yeah, GMK, I think, I don't know why they keep going through that, but to me, I thought GMK was like the break in between Godzilla versus Destroyer and Godzilla 2000. To me, that's the way I always took it. I think,
let me look here, GMK is... It's part of the series. It's just, let me look here.
I know it didn't come out in correlation to years, right? But
GMK comes right after Megaguirus. So the only one that he's not in the suit for is GMK. Which GMK for the uninitiated, that means Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. It's often referred to simply as GMK for the first initials of each monster.
Which is kind of funny because all the monsters in it are Guardian monsters, whereas Godzilla's the villain. So there you go.
Yeah. But this is what struck me as very interesting. His job immediately before this, it was he was the Black Ranger. He was in Super Sentai from 1979 to 1995. From Battle Fever J, Denziman, Gogol 5, Dynaman, Bioman, Changeman, Flashman, Maskman. He took a little break there for about 5 years, came back and was in Die Ranger and Kaku Ranger. And he was always either the Blue or Black Ranger, except during Battle Fever J, where he also played the Pink Ranger. He was Miss America. He did double duty on that show. But
sounds like a roster of Mega Man villains.
Well, yes, But no, he was so a very experienced suit actor, experienced in being in a much more limber costume.
Yeah, but I got something to say. I think I know where you're going with that. But when Legendary put out their 50th deal for Godzilla, they had all three of the original suit actors together.
Right.
And they had a lengthy discussion. I think it was like an hour-long interview with all three of them. And they were talking about the different styles of how the suits wore. Now, the first guy, of course, he was, probably about 160 pounds soaking wet and wound up being like 100 pounds by the time he got out of that suit. I mean, it literally drained him about every 5 minutes. They were having to open that suit up because it was so heavy, so compact, so heat retentive.
Couldn't breathe.
He couldn't breathe, and he was losing. Yeah. So when he walked, I mean, you could see it in the film. It's just a like a little shambling zombie walk. All right. So when you escalate to the next form of the Godzilla, which would be Godzilla King Kong, they upgraded the suit a little bit, and he was able to move around a little bit better with it. Still had the same problem with heat, and that kind of goes. He kind of goes through that whole genre up until Terra Mechagodzilla.
Right.
Now, when you get into Godzilla 1985 or 84, depending on how you want to see it, they branch into a separate individual. They go to a different style suit.
Right.
All right, but now when Biollante through Destroya, you get the second most famous suit actor. In his style, it was similar to the shambling, except instead of actually shambling, it was more of a Frankenstein walk with his suit. Both suits were upright. This gentleman, when he took over, he wanted to revision Godzilla completely. So when they built the suit, he literally made it to where he was crunching forward in the suit.
Right.
Where he always walked, where you could see. And I was thinking, that's not a bad way. You're still feeding on the feralness of the creature. You're giving it a different style.
Well, he looks less human.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that was always a criticism of Godzilla in the 60s and 70s, towards the end of the Showa era, was he had a very humanoid look to him, whereas in this movie, not so much. Some of the other... Richie, this is the first time you've seen this.
Yeah.
I always find it amusing whenever we watch a kaiju movie, because this is where we put Richie out of his depth. What did you think of just the Godzilla costume itself? That's always a big thing. The Godzilla costume to a Godzilla movie is like the actor playing James Bond in a James Bond movie. It's going to be up for debate, and everyone's going to have a favorite. But what did you think of this costume? Which, by the way, we have a Monster Arts of it sitting here on the table next to us, thanks to Ryan, so we can kind of have something for reference. But
it's the 2000 version, but it's the alternate color, which is a new thing that they're starting to do.
We might need to try to take a photo of it and see if we can put it as part of the video.
Yeah, well, it'll go up somewhere.
It looked very monstrous, obviously. Like I said, I haven't seen a whole lot of Godzilla movies.
Right.
I think what was that one we watched?
Well, we've watched Return of Godzilla, and we've watched the original Godzilla. King of the Monsters.
I think it was Return of Godzilla, I think is what I saw.
Was it black and white? What you watched with us?
Or is it the one with the flying space tank?
It was one with the flying space tank.
Okay, so it was Return of Godzilla.
Okay, Return of Godzilla. This one actually, to me, this one seemed more like a monster than the other one did.
Right.
So, I mean, and like Joe said, it was it seemed more expressive. Like he seemed like he was actually calculating what he was going to do. So,
have you ever seen this one before, Roger?
Nope.
No.
I like the suit though. I like the way that the suit's designed, and I like how it's designed more like than an animal than some of the other creations, like the long tail. Like some animals have a long tail for balance and stuff like that. Like the way that this tail is perked up in the back, it's like he uses it for balance and movement.
You can compare that one actually to the long tail that the legendary Godzilla has almost. They're almost comparable.
And I like the spikes a lot better. They're more jagged, more monstrous, more like a rock formation that happens on top of a
That's
thing
what
that's
I
asleep,
thought.
you know?
They look like rocks, crystals.
Yeah.
Bringing up the point of the tail, that's actually, I think, one of the most understated things that you see in the movie. Because aside from the one tail swipe in the actual fight, and then when he smacks the tail in the water as he's getting up, almost directly preceding the fight, you really don't notice that detail as being so prominent. And yet, looking at the figure based on the suit, it really is pretty drap long.
I wonder if that was a deliberate choice in the movie, because the tail of Godzilla was always a big signature thing during the Showa era and even into the Heisei era. It was a very big signature of the fighting style and so on. So I almost wonder if that was a conscious decision of choreography to downplay it a little bit.
Well,
It might have been.
I mean, let's look at his body. Just that little figurine.
Sure.
His tail starts at the rump and goes all the way down.
Right.
That's easily a third of his body.
Yeah.
So it being used to balance him, he can't use it as an offensive weapon as much as he may have done in the other movies.
Because he's mostly leaning forward, so if he didn't have the tail, he'd just go forward.
Right.
Whereas the tail weighs him down.
It's what allows him to stand up.
Yeah, it's a counterbalance.
Let's take a look at our other monster in this one, because our other monster for most of the movie is a giant spaceship. This will be the last 100% original monster in a Godzilla movie until Legendary.
And even then, it cloned Godzilla.
Yeah, and even then, it cloned Godzilla. The next movie will have, in its final form, will have an original monster in Megaguirus, but Megaguirus' origin, so to speak, comes from a previous movie, the Mega Nulons, which I think is from Rodan, if I'm not mistaken. I think Ryan
the
gave me
original
that.
film of Rodan.
So, so originally those monsters came from the Rodan feature film. For most of this movie, our monster that Godzilla is going to be fighting is a CGI bicycle seat. Is the way I described it. Someone else said it looked like an athletics supporter.
Right.
With varying degrees of rock still clinging to it, which made it look good in its initial appearance. I believe David
Flying space poop.
Flying space poop.
Yep.
Yes.
In the beginning, it's a thing. Not even a spaceship. It's a thing.
Yeah,
It's a meteorite.
They believe it to be a meteorite that has been on Earth for 60 million years. They believe it to have been a meteorite. Then we discover it's a spaceship. It's only towards the very end in our climactic battle that we actually see it take a monster form. What did we think of Orga, which is the monster's name in this one? We'll start with Richie. What do you think of Orga in this movie?
I like the fact that, well, is that the final form of the monster or just
Well, the whole thing is Orga, but starting with the ship and work your way down.
Ryan pointed out the fact that when the ship would fly over things, you could see the reflection in the ship.
The mirrored belly.
Yeah, but it looked really fake to a point. I mean, I know Joshi's the one that gets all of these CGIs. Like this was like, yeah, that kind of reminded me of the T-Rex out of Kamen Rider Double a little bit actually.
It looked unfinished.
Yeah,
I would say,
but the fact that they had the reflection there shows that this is actually what they were This is what they were going for.
I think it shows that they were putting thought into it. It's very hard to compare American and Japanese features of the same era against one another because the level of technology in entertainment is a vast difference. More often than not, an American feature will look better than a Japanese.
Well, let's also remember we are looking at a now 16-year-old movie.
Well, I'm going to compare it to a 16-year-old movie. Godzilla in the Sony Pictures version, which was completely CG, looked better than the ship did in this one.
Yeah.
Now, and this one came out afterwards.
And you can't really argue that the ship was a very complex design to begin with either.
No. I think you chalk this up to...
It reminded me of the spaceship from The Navigator, like the 1980-something Disney movie.
Flight of the Navigator.
Flight of the Navigator. That's what the ship reminded me of.
I think you chalk the ship up in this to the fact that this movie's budget was $8.3 million. And they spent the bulk of that money on 2 really cool-looking suits and some really nice miniature work that looked very good, and not on the CG model of the ship that was flying around.
It's like there's like several scenes there where you get a silhouette shot of Godzilla against burning background.
I actually
And
put
it
that in my
looked
notes
really
after
good.
you said it.
It actually looked. That looked really good.
What do you think of the ultimate final look of Orga, the monster himself?
I like the fact that they were going for like a twisted version of Godzilla, even to the point that it was growing its own spines, like they were, like it eventually started to grow its spines like he has. Even though it did start with that. I mean, at first when it popped out, it looked like a giant white jellyfish.
Right, and it was still CG.
Yeah. But it showed, rapid evolution in the movie, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But
what do you think, Joe?
I really enjoyed the suit and the CGI effects that they gave to the suit. Namely the regeneration and, yes, the hybridization effects as they continue to try and turn into a closer clone of Godzilla or hybrid to what Godzilla is from its original base alien jellyfish stupidity. Prior to that point, it's just going to be a series of no, this is awful. And bad jokes that I'm not going to bring up, but Dave was making more of it than anyone else.
Whoa.
Ryan started it.
It's my fault. I started it with
You
one.
started.
Are you talking about
You
invisible?
domino,
I
and then he
didn't.
was like
I
thousands
didn't
of dollars.
Are you
miss
talking
the
about-
way that it was taken.
Invisible tentacle violation of the electrical system?
Yeah.
In any case,
I didn't make the
it's
tentacle
really
jokes.
hard to make Orga anything until the end, because it was just
Well, he
an
wasn't
awful design.
anything until the end.
Yeah, but I would rather have a 1960 style flying saucer complete with strings still attached to make that more believable than a flying bicycle seat with a mirrors coating CG. I'm sorry, it didn't work for me. Even with the nozzle, it apparently had a beam weapon more powerful than Godzilla's nuclear breath.
I want to throw this out there because were you here when we watched Godzilla '84? Okay, we're going to be on a similar wavelength here when it comes to the spaceship form of Orga. I would have rather had the Super X again. If you'd have done the effect like that, where it literally was just a model on an arm against a black background to hide the arm, I think you would have gotten away with that much better than the costume or the CG ship.
You would have more money to spend on a better model for that matter. Jeez.
Now, this will be a question because I don't think anyone else in the room will have seen this movie, so this will be a question for Ryan. The vibe I get off of Orga is they really wanted something in the vibe of Biollante again.
Agreed.
Where it was very much an inanimate object as the monster up until the very end. The only difference being that this one becomes mobile where Biollante really wasn't.
Yeah.
I think they did a better job of Biollante, but...
Well, technically, because Biollante goes back to being... It's until the second form takes place. In other words, until the spaceship basically steals the cells from Godzilla and forms this monstrous creature, which would be basically its symbiote
Version of
second cell.
Yeah, so probably a Bizarro Goji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare that to Biollante just was gorgeous from the start to finish. Even
it was
in
also
its monstrous version.
It was also a physical prop from beginning to end.
It's literally a puppet. In this film, you see it basically twisting all the cables underground, and they shoot out. Well, Biollante did the same thing, except it was Vond. You do get comparisons between the two, but yeah, with Biollante being a stable, stationary creature until the very final stage, when it finally did move a little bit.
But it's a creature that does evolve. It is largely an inanimate object. It's certainly not organic, humanoid as we would think of it in the terms of a Godzilla monster. I mean, it's organic. It's a plant. But
as far as this monster breaking boundaries like other monsters, no, you're not going to get that. As far as it having any super abilities, no, you're not going to get that either.
I think my argument being they've done this once with physical props. That's why I think the CG on this falls on its ass, because they could do it with Biollante. Why couldn't they do it here?
They should have done it the other way.
What about the actual... Now, once you get to Orga, I like it.
Yeah. This could be a simple thing like I was saying earlier when we were watching the film. This movie came out super ass fast after
It really did.
Godzilla, the Sony version with Matthew Broderick. It really did. I mean, there were certain aspects of that Godzilla that the Japanese people did like, but a lot of it they hated. They literally just hated it. And if you see similarities in this film. Like, give you an example, when all of them are running around in the taxi cab in New York, Godzilla surprises them. Next thing you know, they're sitting in its mouth. And you hear, the Frank Azaria scream, "We're in its mouth, do something, we're in its mouth." In Godzilla 2000, these people decide to go over rubble through a tunnel where Godzilla's just standing there. Well, he finally gets down pretty much level with the vehicle. And you see the breath. That's a similarity. You see Godzilla stomping. You don't really see the creature in the beginning of the Godzilla film from Sony, you just see the footprints in the ground.
Right.
Again, you go back to Godzilla 2000, you've got this scientist
Hopping down in the sand prints.
He's
Looking for a skin sample.
He's
from
going
this
right by him
full steel
in Godzilla 2000. That's another similarity. So that's what I'm saying. Toho basically was trying to let the American people understand something. You don't fuck with the king. Period. Period. But if you want a feral Godzilla, we got you, buddy. We're going to give it to you.
Let me give you an idea of how quick Toho was to pull the trigger on this movie. So, because Toho did not have a Godzilla movie in development when the Sony one came out.
Yeah, you're looking at summer to summer, and it was even
So,
quicker than that.
the Sony movie came out May 20th, 1998. That is the release date for the Sony Godzilla. Godzilla 2000, so we will assume, because they did not have one in production or in development
script, no nothing.
before the Sony Godzilla hit theaters. From May of 1998, this movie went through development, pre-production, production, post-production, and marketing and release. It was out December the following year.
That's what I'm saying.
It was about 18 months from beginning to end.
It was literally the slap in the damn face from the Japanese saying, "Look, we gave you the right. It's awesome that you are taking the distributing rights and you're putting out all these other Godzilla films. You put out your version of Godzilla. Now, on fairness to the Godzilla film, I think you and I both can agree, Mike. If they had went with the script for the sequel, we may be having a much different debate about that particular movie, Godzilla.
Yeah, there was a script that was ready to go for a Godzilla 2 based off of the 98 picture, and the script was actually... I've read through it, and the script was actually
good.
quite good, and it was a continuation with the iguana. And we've seen that image of Godzilla can work because the animated series was quite
great.
Successful with it.
Yeah.
But as far as a feature goes, it was just so lambasted that this movie, it's a rush job. And that's why I think it's very funny, Richie, that you say that Orga's spaceship form, it reminds you of the T-Rex from the first episode of Double, which is an unfinished CGI wire model for the most part. You get that vibe looking at it. What did you think of the looks here, Dave? Because you've been sitting by patiently waiting with that impish grin on your face.
I think it's funny is because in this one I am going to be like so many times the opposite of you guys. Because I liked the spaceship. It's a spaceship. I mean, it was a silver, strange-shaped thing that flew. When it was a rock, it was goofy. But
it looked better.
I disagree, but that's fine. I like the spaceship fine. I didn't care too much for the monster. And I've been sitting here trying to figure out, do I not like the monster because I don't like the way it looked? Did I not like the monster because of the way it acted? I think really I don't like the monster because it showed up for 8.5 minutes.
Wow.
And that's all it felt like anyways. I don't know if that's true or not. It's
it's Phi syndrome.
Okay, probably. If I get where you're going with that.
He didn't show up till the last 10 minutes,
right,
so it
right.
doesn't matter.
I mean, well, I didn't have a chance to give a damn about it.
Okay, I think that's a fair assumption.
You know, the monster showed up, and it's adapting. That was neat. He got blasted, and it regrew. Well, that was neat. And now he's a snake, and he's trying to eat Godzilla. Oh, what the hell?
Which Godzilla had the same reaction at first when the mouth opened up. That goes back to that expressiveness. You had that, because I made the remark when you see Godzilla rear up first, and I was like, the fuck? It's as if that's exactly what Godzilla says.
Would you say, given the fact, I mean, how many Godzilla films have you watched? Throughout the entire genres.
Oh, me personally?
Yes.
I have watched all the Heisei era and all the Millennium era and about 3 or 4 out of the Show era. So
Okay.
a large chunk.
Okay.
Whereas I've seen 4, the 3 we've seen here, and I've seen the Matthew Broderick one.
All right. Personality. I think that's what we keep going. We keep going, instinct. But I think it's more personality.
That Godzilla has one?
That he does have one.
Well, he has a personality in a lot of the movies. I think in this movie it is...
Well, it's more than off and on.
Well, yeah.
Like in the first movie, he's either on or he's traveling.
I'm pulling this from my broad experience
Sure.
in a bunch of movies. He has a personality in a lot of them. Just in a lot of them, it's a very playful personality or a very vicious personality. And in this case, it is...
spirit or the
hero or the land.
protector.
Whereas in this one, it's more of a more deliberate Godzilla.
He has a goal, even if we don't understand what it is.
Right. And you see the wheels turning.
And the following features with this same design,
Mm-hmm.
those emotions, those those little how he moves,
Right. Reactions.
the reactions, it becomes more evident, especially in Tokyo SOS and the one prior film to that too.
Against Mechagodzilla.
Against Mechagodzilla, or Kiyu as they call it. You were talking when you were talking about the tail wasn't predominant. We were talking about that a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Right.
I brought that
In
up
the following films, like especially against Megaguirus, now you got a creature there that they use very little CGI on.
Right.
Megaguirus has got very little. It goes back to the awesome. Okay, this is like Rodan. This is like Mothra.
Eventually, he has very little CG.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part or two in there when he first starts to become what it is. There's CGI there, but the mainstream fighting, especially with the storyline that they've got in that, you see a lot more use of his tail. You see a lot more use of some special abilities that Godzilla's kind of been like, I'm going to hold on to that until I need to.
Right.
I don't want to blow it for anyone that's never seen it. So I kind of want to keep
Just
some
kind of
those
saying that
surprises.
he keeps things in reserve from time to time.
Yeah,
Like,
he's got some things up his sleeve. So
doing the boxer again. He's gauging
I'm
his
crippled.
fight.
I'm showing you I'm crippled, but really I'm fixing to wear your ass out.
Let's talk about, because we've harped a lot on the visuals, and frankly, I think that is this movie's strong suits, the visuals.
I think Richie had a really good point, because a lot of times we have a problem, like your favorite saying, you look too close, you see the zippers.
Right.
And what was the one with the flying Z ship?
Oh, the Super X?
Sure.
That's Return of Godzilla.
So in Return of Godzilla, you said many times, with the shots and the way they did it, Godzilla looks great because you can only see part of him in the shot.
Correct.
Because the building is hiding some of it.
Right.
But at the beginning of the movie, he comes up out of the dark. You see his silhouette. You don't even get the chance to see the zipper.
Yeah, well, I love
get
a lot
a few details from the lighting,
Right.
like you see the glint in the eyes and a couple scales, and that's about it.
And now think about this: how awesome did he look in the beginning of the movie, and how cheesy did he kind of look at the end? And sure, he's got much more.
You're talking about on this one
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
particularly. I mean,
and he's got a lot of like when he bit the thing.
Well, I will.
yeah, but
yeah,
I mean,
that's where
That's where it's like, it's costume versus costume. This is so it knocks you out of the fantasy, in my opinion.
I will give you that. I think the threatening imagery to set Godzilla up.
Right.
The first time we really get to see him is through a lighthouse window, and we see his face
with a ship.
Yeah, with a ship in his mouth, so you get a real good sense of scale. The first time you get an idea of how immense he is, the car pulls up to him, and the spotlight searches up his body until eventually hits his head.
And this is only the third one, but it seems like so many times each one of these videos, each one of these movies, visual-wise for Godzilla, is capturing something good. But sometimes it feels like they forget it, or they just decide not to use it again. And I don't quite get that. Like this one, we keep saying his expressiveness, his reactions, and you're giving credit, Mike's giving credit to the actor in the suit.
A lot, yeah.
Which, I can totally buy because I like puppets and
Body
Muppets. Well, I like puppets and Muppets. And you can watch the work under certain puppeteers versus the same character under different puppeteers, and they react different. And if you pay attention, you can tell.
I mean, Frank Oz portrays certain characters a certain way. Jim Henson does it another, and a lot of times you can tell whose hand is in there.
Yeah.
because that's like with the suit here. You got the actor doing the suit, but when it comes to he's doing the jerking and he's doing that. But when it comes to the opening mouth, the eyes, that's all puppetry. That's all controlled.
Right.
And
because I mean, you got to take consideration. I mean, where Godzilla's neck is, right there where the shoulder is.
Sure.
That's where the real
actor's head is. Yeah.
And all that zipper part, which I have to admit, you're right. If you get up real close on some of the older films, you can tell.
Well, even on this one, it seemed like the closer they were on Godzilla, the cheesier he looked.
True enough, but in order to be able to see the zippers on this particular Godzilla, you really have to.
You have to know where they are
because they run from the top spine all the way down to about where the starting of the hump to the tail.
Well,
that section pulls out.
Right. Well, don't take the zipper comment.
Well,
literally.
No. I'm just saying
figurative
about
statement.
the little things that you were referring to about in the shadowing part where he looks good with the silhouette versus up close, and you're like, damn. Really?
Yeah, well, in the shadow, it like, I'm in the moment. That's a monster. When it's in the city, it's like, that's a jackass in a suit in the middle of a big cardboard town.
Well, let's take a look at something else here because we're starting to run on time here. The story, because I think the visuals to me are the strongest suit of this movie. The story drags and drags.
It does a bit.
And drags.
Was it you, when we sat here and watched the American version of the first Godzilla movie, tell me that the original Japanese movie is a total different beast?
Oh, yeah.
That it's like two movies at once?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got the feeling from this one.
Well, see, we didn't watch the American version.
Well, no,
we watched the American version of Godzilla.
For the original film, we watched Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Okay.
We watched the
I thought you were referring to the
Return of Godzilla.
I was talking
we watched
about,
the Japanese one.
With Perry Mason.
Yeah. Yeah, when you watch the original Gojira in Japanese, it's a totally different animal, just like it is when you watch the Return of Godzilla in the American version.
Okay. Well, I thought you had told me that there was like two. It was almost like two stories.
It
was the Godzilla film, and then there's the love romance between the professor, his assistant, and someone else.
It is.
And then
and really, to even strengthen that argument, it's even actually a love. It's kind of a love-hate relationship between the professor and his ability not to want to kill Godzilla,
right?
To actually, feeling sad and sorry that he's having to do what he's having to do.
I think this movie is that. Not exactly, but I mean, it's two movies. There's a Godzilla plot going on with the space alien rock, and then there's kind of a family adventure.
Sort of.
Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Sci-fi dad keeping his daughter along, and their new pal, the reporter.
Who may or may not be
right.
interest,
as he deals
but
with
they thankfully don't go that deep into that rabbit hole.
As he deals with the rivalry of his old college friends, I agree with you, Mike. It was like,
in fact,
don't fall asleep, David.
In fact, one of the things that you had mentioned, Ryan, was because I think you've only seen the American edit of this, the English edit.
Yeah.
This movie is the Japanese version is 8 minutes longer. They actually do edit out 8 minutes of footage, basically to pick up the pacing of the movie.
Okay. Well, it's like I said before too. I said if you listen to the voice reflections, even of the monster, it's different from the version I just watched to the one that I just caught over the holiday weekend.
Right.
Now, there is two different voices there. So yeah, there's definitely some change in there, which I'll go back and double check that again.
Yeah. What do you guys think of the story, Joe, Richie? What did we think here?
You want to go first, or? I get what you're saying about it dragging.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would put it to quite the same magnitude you do.
Mm-hmm.
It got a little slow, but what I felt was important was it was keeping the human reaction to everything going on. And it was keeping that as spot on as possible. Which can easily be lost, because you could have taken out that whole father-daughter plus random assistant reporter girl,
especially the scenes where they were in their what looked like their apartment, and she was trying to extort the
membership club.
Right.
I thought that was a good bit.
It's funny,
and in its own way, a tension breaker. Though I wouldn't really say there was much tension to be broken at that point.
It's like it's not really part of the plot, but it was hilarious.
But maybe what you're getting at is that part probably would have been okay versus the guy that owns the building they are staying in comes out, he's drinking. Well, let me help you get that bike on the back of the car. We could have that would probably been the part that you would have been able to omit.
I mean, I'm sure we could all sit here and come up with 20 little things that could have been pulled out and wouldn't hurt the feel.
Probably. Like, even I'll agree there's enough there that probably could have been pulled, but I wouldn't completely say everything didn't feel extraneous at the time.
What do you think, Richie?
It was a bit slow going, but once it eventually did find its pace, it did tend to go a little bit better. Other guys didn't really, at least for me, it didn't really find its pace until
for the last 20-30 minutes.
Yeah.
The movie actually runs about it's 107 minutes in the Japanese version we watched. I tend to agree that I think eventually it does find its pacing. I think there is a lot of extraneousness to the movie, but not I think a lot of people would look at a movie like this one and their instinct would be to cut out a lot of the funny elements.
Joe made me think of something.
Okay.
When you're traveling in a caravan of vehicles, you get what's called the accordion effect.
All right.
Your vehicles stretch out, your vehicles get too close.
Sure.
That's what this movie was. I think that's what you were saying that made me think, it comes and goes. I agree with you. You couldn't really lose anything.
I think you could have probably just tightened up a few things.
Yeah. A couple of the pauses could have been slightly less and such. It feels like we're all in agreement that it's slow. It's just the magnitude to which we each felt it.
Right.
And in its own way, at least with Mike and Ryan, because y'all have seen so many more compared to the rest of us, to varying degrees, it's more prominently noticed by y'all.
Well, I feel like if with some trickery edit, you could pull the monsters out of this, or at least Godzilla.
No, I would disagree, because the reason why I disagree is most of the human element is all based around Godzilla is something that they have studied.
Sure, but you don't have to see him, is what I mean.
Up until the very end, when it becomes absolutely necessary.
Okay.
I mean, just the way the human scenes are, where just it's him, the dad, his kid.
Then we get the Legendary movie, and everyone bitches about it.
Oh, really? Well, see, I never saw that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because the Legendary movie, Godzilla is actually in it very, very little, and everyone bitched.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how much screen time did he get in this film?
It doesn't tell me here, but
versus what we've already, those of us who've already seen the Legendary version.
I would say he.
Because their argument is he gets just as much screen time as all the other films, and I'm thinking, no.
Well, but the Legendary one is a longer movie.
Yeah.
But
the other thing, though, if you pull Godzilla out from earlier segments in this particular movie,
I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you could.
Yeah, no, I'm saying if you did, you lose some of the intelligence that Godzilla's exhibiting because, as Ryan pointed out, he's destroying those power plants to try and limit
the damage Orga can do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Orga's
that's the
name
reason why he's going after the power plants, the nuclear plants.
It was by design this time, not just they're in my way.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if you look at the scenes with the people, like the action scene with the guy in the building and it's blowing up, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
those self-contained type scenes.
Rappelled on the elevator thing that we all kind of mocked.
Those kind of scenes. The girl dealing with her coworkers at the newspaper office, them in the home, all those self-contained scenes, even the people throwing down the shutters and hiding in their stores, didn't have anything to do with the story. All of the stuff that does not involve Godzilla, you could almost, with the right edits, make a little movie out of that.
Probably.
Sure.
I mean, that's what I thought was kind of neat.
And
it's two stories.
It could have been any natural
any
disaster
natural
on the broadcast.
Yeah.
And I will say this: one of the things I like about this movie personally is I liked that the movie had a sense of humor without sacrificing the severity of the creature
or the seriousness of the event.
Right. Like, for instance, the very beginning, because we all got a nice laugh out of it. When they are searching, they're panning up Godzilla. The lights go up until they reach the top, and then there's that pregnant pause with the spotlights on Godzilla's head, and they suddenly realize, oh shit, that's Godzilla, and they turn the lights off on the car.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So, I mean, little moments of
even to the point of him telling the reporter chick, "Don't take a picture.
You're too close.
We're too close."
Yeah.
And what does she do?
She snaps him off reflexively, and then
and
he
what
reacts
does
and
Godzilla
tries
do?
to break it.
Yeah. So I think the movie, the pacing would be my ding to the movie, because I actually thought the story was pretty cool, and I do like a lot of the moments in the movie. So, final thoughts on Godzilla 2000. This is the last, for now, Japanese first Godzilla movie that we're going to watch. The next one we watch is the Legendary version. So, Dave, final thoughts, and is this a 101?
I will go ahead and get the hate out the way, because I'm going to get it.
Lay it down, brother. Lay it down.
No, I'm going to get it. You guys.
Lay it down, baby.
You guys kept repeatedly comparing this to the Matthew Broderick film.
I'm not comparing it. There's a lot of correlation
because they came out near each other.
Right.
And
I like the
and
Matthew
some of the
Broderick version
similarities.
better. Now, I will say that his Godzilla.
Oh, there was some crosstalk. Could you repeat that statement?
I like the Matthew Broderick version better.
Okay.
I will say that this Godzilla looks like Godzilla, where New York Zilla thing was a giant mutated iguana. Right.
Okay.
It's a monster film. But as far as monster films go, because I'm not a Godzilla fan,
right.
I'm a guy who's watching a movie, I enjoyed the other one better. I think it did everything better. I've enjoyed aspects of this, but for the three Godzilla films I've seen, I still prefer the first one.
I have often said that the only great sin the Matthew Broderick Godzilla movie ever committed was that it was called Godzilla.
I agree with that.
So, Joe, final thoughts.
I like it. If I kept a lot of kaiju movies in my collection for feel-good days and whatnot, it would probably wind up in that collection.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never made a secret that I'm more big stompy robots than big stompy monsters.
We're going to get to big stompy robots eventually going through these Godzilla movies.
Yeah, well, that's another story.
Richie, final thoughts.
The movie was good, if a bit drawn out.
He's got to give it the Roy 10. He's got to watch it 8 more times before he really.
I mean, I would keep it. I mean, that wouldn't be something I'd watch, constantly. But
Right.
I would want to pull it out every now and then. It's like, okay.
So
I think from the sound of it, none of us think it should be 101.
Yeah, I was about to ask you. I don't think you were going to give it that qualifier. Is this something you would show a Toku newbie, so to speak, Joe?
I'd be tempted to, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I think it would be a better hook than either of the other two Godzilla movies we've seen as a group here.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
you
fair.
could use it to springboard, because, albeit with the caveat of going, yeah, they've had much better monsters in terms of overall movie presence.
Mm.
When you're doing the takeaway from it, it's focus on that final form for this one.
Well, see,
But
Joe,
you could use that.
you made me think of something the last time we talked about 101, and that's actually approaching this as if it was a real class. And I think because of what you said and the limited movies I've seen so far, I'd show the original Godzilla, and then I'd show Pacific Rim. And then I would say, now let's see how we get from A to Z.
B.
No, that's
Well,
Z.
yeah.
I mean, it's down. To me, the Godzilla movie, the first one, is Japanese art. And the last one is pure American entertainment.
Are you talking about comparison to Godzilla or Gojira to Legendary's
Rim.
Godzilla?
No,
No,
Legendary Pacific Rim.
Well, I went with Pacific Rim because it's the only one I've seen. If I'd seen Legendary Godzilla and it's fluff like Pacific Rim is, then that argument would be true. But I haven't seen that one, so I don't know.
Yeah, we definitely need to get him on board.
Pacific Rim is the newest movie I've seen out of 5 movies we've seen in Denzicaster, and the handful of clips and bits and things that I've seen outside.
I didn't watch the movie, but it sounds awesome. Y'all talking about it. I still love the suit, and I want to echo Ryan's comment about practical effects versus CGI. If you ever watched the movie The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and there's a newer The Thing, and
Yeah, the
it
prequel.
was all CGI, and the new one, the old one was all practical effects. The old one holds up. The old one's better.
Still,
in my
yeah.
opinion. It's
Yeah.
better, and it was it's over 20 years old now.
And that's not coming because I'm a kaiju fan. That's coming because I'm a
A
die-hard, gory-ass horror fan.
Yep.
There's something about John Carpenter's style.
Practical effects will
Well-
always win out, and that's the way they did it in the 80s and
When
90s.
things
but
are
after
solid.
2000.
Things are visceral.
Yeah.
Richie, would this be something you would call 101? Would you show this to a Toku newbie?
I probably would, yeah.
Probably would.
Yeah.
I'll give my final thoughts here on it. I think it's a fun movie once it finds its feet, and I think that takes a while. I like the actors in this one a lot. We got a lot of repeat performers in this one.
Sure do.
I like a lot of the characters in this one. I think Godzilla is... I would say I prefer this portrayal of Godzilla over virtually any Heisei-era Godzilla performance I've seen. I really do like this one. It's obviously one of my favorite suits. I wouldn't show this to somebody if they had never seen Tokusatsu before. This is not going to be how I introduce them to it. If I'm going to introduce them to giant monsters, i.e. Godzilla, I think I would echo Dave to a point. I would watch the original Godzilla first.
And approach it as an art film.
Yeah, almost. And then I would start with that, and then I think this would probably be like, if you're looking at it from a classroom perspective, this is probably like late sophomore year. I would not use this as the introductory. The introductory to Kaiju would be the original Godzilla. My version of yours going A to B, I would start with Godzilla, I would end with Final Wars. because Final Wars is a flat-out spectacle. There is no damn story to Final Wars. It's just kick-ass from beginning to finish. And
there is a little storyline, but
see,
it's not
there's
as dominant as
there's just enough of a storyline to explain why there's a fucking ship flying around.
Realistically, between the two of us, it's all going to come down to the lesson plan and the attempt of what we want to.
Right.
Yeah.
See,
Absolutely.
Which we're not going to go into details here.
No.
well, I want to touch on that slightly, though. The reason why I wouldn't show the original Godzilla first. You have to have the class already starting to think in a semi-serious manner. This is what you could use as the hook for that. This is why my argument would be this would be probably one-on-one material in terms of that class style that I prefer to look for. Because you want somebody to be completely engaged by the time you can get to the original Godzilla because it has so much high artistic value to it.
See,
I would want them focused and engaged in the class at that point. This is what I can use to go and say, hey, so you've heard this, what this class entails. Here's something from the class. And you use that and then you go, now, after this one, we're going to start making you think.
I think
and that's when you would pull in the original Godzilla.
I think you start with the starting block because of two reasons. A, because of how good it is, and B, because of how bad it is.
I would say I can see both
It's the difference
perspectives.
between the thinking caps.
Right.
I see both perspectives. I think the more Godzilla movies we watch here, Joe, I think you would wind up with the outlook I would have going by your logic of a lesson plan. There would be better movies to use as the intro than this.
There might be.
Right, but
Again,
we just haven't seen them.
I've seen more than what we have seen here.
Right.
I'm nowhere near YouTube.
Right.
But I'm keeping that
I don't
talk
think Mike
of
has anywhere
101.
near Ryan, but
Actually, I
I'm
think Ryan's knowledge of kaiju over my other than just repeated watchings.
I was about to
is-
say, the
is-
number they've watched, side by side.
No, he's actually seen all. You've seen everything
Repetition
but
they've
one.
been watched.
I've even seen the one I don't own. That's
Okay.
the problem. I just
Okay.
don't own it.
So he has actually seen every Godzilla movie ever
Sure.
made. I have seen every. Once you hit the Heisei era,
Well,
I've
amongst
seen
the
everything.
6 of us, you're the closest to it.
Point being,
But
y'all
you've
two the
watched them
experts. I've seen
18
more than
times
one
over and
here,
over.
but for
Yeah.
the purposes of any one-on-one discussion, I am
But there
limiting
are
it
certain, like the variation
purely
there.
to what we have here.
I always skip it. I've never checked it out. I'm gonna make a change on that.
If
So
we sit down and do the Hobbit movies,
Right.
I'm on board. Because I've
So-
watched them
Oh,
dozens and
Yeah,
dozens.
it's gonna
of
be the
times.
extended bit. Yeah, we'll be starting on a Friday and leaving.
Oh no,
on a
we'll have
Sunday.
to just come in. You've already watched it on your own.
Yeah.
So Ryan, your final thoughts, and would you use this as 101 material?
My final thoughts is this. Number one, as a Godzilla lover, I'm not going to throw any Godzilla movie, and that includes Sony's Godzilla, under the bus. I'm not going to chop them up. I'm not going to feed them to the damn sharks, because it's a part. Whether you like it or not, it's all a part. Do I love this movie? No. Do I like it? Yes. Would I show it? Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that's a little mix of emotion there.
He just
But-
wants the funding to buy the fucking movie again.
Yeah.
This class gets every movie, all of them, English, American.
I
Give me
have
one.
I have to bring them. Don't worry.
No, that's
I
what I'm
can
saying.
do that, but
Go ahead and get the state to pay
Yeah.
for it.
That's right. But no, as far as using the Millennium-era Godzilla,
Mm.
I wouldn't necessarily use Godzilla 2000 as the starting block. I get what everyone's getting at. If I had to use one, it would probably be Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla or Kiyu.
Yeah. So the actual name of the movie being
Because-
Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. Yes.
Because the reason being, that storyline revolves around the 54 Godzilla or Gojira movie line.
Yeah, it actually goes through the original movie so much that it would be worthwhile.
Because you're dealing with aspects, and then I would go back and say, all right, you've seen this, you're going to understand now why they did what they did. Here is Gojira, so let's watch that. And I would tell them, say, look, you have an option. You can watch the American version, which is okay, or you can watch the Japanese version. And there's a reason why I would pitch that, because it's like what Dave said. It is. There are certain cinema that are from the Japanese that are just absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful. Excellent. And Gojira is one of them.
I mean, from that era, Gojira, Yojimbo, Seven Samurai, Hidden Fortress, and I'm trying to think of a couple others. Yeah, I mean, there's just a handful of just tremendous features from that time frame. So, and I would put Godzilla in that company because it is that groundbreaking. So I think we have pretty much wrapped things up for Godzilla 2000. This is Mike.
I'm Dave.
I'm Joe.
Richie.
Ryan.
And Roger.
And we'll see you next time on Denzicaster. You've been listening to Electric City Sentai Denzicaster on the ECS Network. All music heard during this episode was composed by Kevin MacLeod and can be found at Incompetech.com. We want to hear from you, so please find us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Denzicaster, and of course, share, like, subscribe.